Okay, we're up to Daf Chaf Hey and Kesuvos. Let's just set the tone. We had a Mishnah that said of two people, they said they're Kohen. One person said on another person he's a Kohen. Another person said on another person he's a Kohen. So that we said that they would be believed. According to the Tanakhama, they'd be believed. However, not fully. You'd only be believed in Truma. You'd only believe in Truma. That if you have eight echad on your status as a Kohen, that would permit you to eat Truma. Rabbi Yehuda disagreed. Rabbi Yehuda said that no, even your status on eight echad would not be believed eating regarding Truma, would not be believed. In order to eat Truma, you would need two Kahanim. The thrust of the Machloikus was, initially we thought it was Goimlin, were you chayish for Goimlin or not? And the Gemara kind of said, well, maybe, but there's a better teretz. The teretz is whether you go ahead and you're oil yuchsin al pi eating Truma. Bisman hazeh, and even in those times, we had to know who a Kohen was. So if you had a chazaka, you were a Kohen, you were a Kohen. You had a yichus brief, you did certain things, we knew you were a Kohen. But the question over here is someone we're not aware of. We need Adis to ascertain that he's a Kohen. So therefore, if you're eating Truma, can I say you're a Kohen or not? Says the Chachamim, no. Says the Tanakhama, no. The fact that you eat Truma is no raya to anything. It's not. We're not going to let you go ahead. The lashon of the Gemara is be oila yuchsen. We won't let you go ahead do the avodah. We won't let you marry. We won't let the woman that you marry automatically be without any chashash chalolim, according to Rashi, shayla of mamzeris. However, but since Truma will not lend to go ahead and lead to you people misconstruing that you're a full-fledged Kohen, we have no problem in an Eid Echad allowing you to eat Truma. However, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that no, that if you go ahead and eat Truma, people will say automatically you are a Kohen and we will be Mali Yivichsen. So therefore, to avoid any problems, an Eid Echad would not be believed to say you're a Kohen in Truma. That was the machlokes between the Tanakhama and Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara wanted to know about a shtar. We had a shaila if a guarantor, let's say he was the borrower of a shtar and he signed his name as a kohen, and you have two eidim written on that. Would those eidim be saying just money on the shtar, or they'd be saying on the kohen as well? That was the machlokes, and we then went into the machlokes by what about if you see him duchen? If the kohen duchens, would we go ahead and elevate him from the duchen? Would we elevate him to what? To status of a kohen, the Inyan Yuchsin. So the Gemara brought an incident from Bimei Ezra, where the people were coming back from Goyla. Again, in Galus, they were there for a while. There was no Beis HaMikdash. They were eating Truma de Rabbanon. The Truma in Chutz La'aretz is only the Rabbanon. And where do you know they're the Kohanim or not? So Nehemiah had paskin on a certain mishpacha that they're pasal kahuna, meaning whatever the chazaka to the extent what you've been doing until now, you can continue to do, but you won't be able to eat kachim. You won't be able to eat kachim. The Gemara said it must be a raya that you're not oila from duchening to yichus, because if you were, these people were duchening and were going to be oila. The Gemara gave two truths. One, the Gemara said, since these people had a big reyesa, they had already a big problem. The problem is they were kahanim that could not eat kachim. So since they could not eat kachim, no one is mistakenly going to go ahead and say that what is that they're going to be oil duchen. That being oil duchen is that they're mekichos. Ken zayin, normally in a normal situation where kohen duchens, we will say it's a full-fledged kohen in yuchsin. In this case, with these people, you wouldn't say it because they have a reyesa, they have another, they're branded that they're not kahanim fully because they can't eat. And the Gemara substantiated that raya with the Truma also. It must be that what? Because or else it must by Truma. If we're allowing them to eat Truma, so it must be why? Because it's according to Rabbi that you be Ma'al Yuchsin, how could they continue to eat Truma? And the Gemara answered because since they had a reyes already, they can't eat kachim, they would be able to eat Truma, or the only Truma they'd be able to eat is Truma de Rabbanan versus Truma de Raisa. So for the next piece of Gemara, again, we're going to continue with that shaila, whether you're Ma'al Yuchsin as a result of a duchen. As a result of duchening. Just a few pieces of Yediyah information, introductory remarks. There's basically two types of Truma D'Rabbanan. Any produce in Eretz Yisrael, not grown in Eretz Yisrael, even if it is the produce that's Mechuyev D'Oraisa in Eretz Yisrael, is Truma D'Rabbanan. So, for example, in Eretz Yisrael, the only produce that's Chayiv and Truma D'Oraisa would be Dagon, Tirosh, V'Yitzar. One, Dagon, the grains, the 5 grains, Tirosh, which is Geffen, wine, and Yitzar, which is olives or oil. Those 3 are Truma D'Oraisa. Peaches, nectarines, Rimonim, Te'enim, these are all D'Rabbanan. These are all D'Rabbanan. They would all be D'Rabbanan in Eretz Yisrael. In Chutz La'aretz, even Dagan Tirosh Yitzar would be D'Rabbanan. Even Dagan Tirosh should be D'Rabbanan. So that's Truma. That's 2 different types of Trumas. What would make Truma Bisman Hazeh? Bisman Hazeh Truma is it the Raisa D'Rabbanan? Let's say even Dagan Tirosh Yitzar in Eretz Yisrael Bisman Hazeh would be contingent on the Shaila whether Kedusha Rishayna Kitchel Shaita Kitchel Lavai or Kedusha Shnia Kitchel Shaita Lavai. We've come across in Shas that Yeshua, when he came to the land, he was Mekadesh the land, but it was only up till after the destruction bias, so they Mekadesh the land a second time. When Ezra was Mekadesh the land the second time, was that permanently or not? If it's permanently, then all the produce Bisman Hazeh is the Raisa. If, however, they weren't Mekadesh, it would be the Rabbanan. Good. There's another place outside of Eretz Yisrael called Surya, probably Syria. The Gemara calls it Aram Tzova. The Gemara in the first parak of Gittin goes into the Shiloh of Kivish Yochid Shmei Kivish Olay Shmei Kivish, whether the capturing of an individual without certain factors being factored in, does it go ahead and make it a part of Eretz Yisrael or not? So Aram Tzova was captured by David HaMelech, and it was considered kibush yachid, the kibush of an individual. If kibush yachid shmei kibush, then Surya would have a din of Eretz Yisrael in their produce. If, however, kibush yachid lo shmei kibush, then it will be D'Rabbanan. Okay. Another thing that a kohen gets besides truma would be challah. Challah. There's something called challah. You all know what challah. Bisman Hazeh, what do we do with challah? We separate it and we burn it. We don't know who kahanim are, right? We know Shalom Kagan thinks he's a kohen, but Shalom Kagan would not eat challah because Shalom Kagan is not 1,000,000% sure. Shalom Kagan wouldn't eat truma. Again, Shalom Kagan has grown up his whole life as a kohen. Kagan it wasn't the Chavetz Chaim a Kagan or a Pupko? Chavetz Chaim was a kohen, right?
Yeah, his original name was Pupko, not Kagan.
Pupko, not Kagan. But Kagan is one of those Kahanim names. They have Kahanim different names. But again, we assume, but he doesn't have a yichus brief going all the back. There's an assumption over time. So therefore, Bisman Hazeh, we do not give the Manas Tekuna to the Kahanim because A, prove you're a Kohen, and I'll give it to you. And B, some of them, a Truma, for example, carries it Misa B'dei Shemayim if you eat it. Challah has a din of Truma. So we burn Challah, Bisman Hazeh. Challah, Bisman Hazeh is D'Rabbanan and D'Oraisa. So these are all, these Matnas Kahuna come into play. Would we go ahead and make a person a kohen automatically? Certainly, one of the things that does make a person, that we assume that he's a kohen in Yuchsin, is where he's called up for Kriyas HaTorah. He's called up first, the Kriyas HaTorah, the Kidashtoi, that we give him first place, that was used as a chazaka that he's a kohen. So all these factors will come into play, and we're up to Daf Chaf Amid Aleph. Daf Chaf Amid Aleph, we just spoke about Truma, and we spoke about kachim, that these people cannot eat truma nor could they eat kachim. This family, they could eat kachim truma d'Rabbanan, but not truma d'Oraisa. Toshma, where how many lines down? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 lines down. Toshma. Chazaka l'kahuna. What's a chazaka? The kahuna is nesias kapayim b'Bavel. In Bavel of they duchen. Again, a shaila would come into the place of the shaila. Can we be oil yuchsin a kohen who duchens? So nesias kapayim, literally the lifting up of the hands in Bavel. The achilas chala bisurya, and eating chala in surya. This is according to Mandi Amar, guys, that kivush yachid shmei kivush. So therefore, chala will be daraisa because it's not considered chutz la'aretz. This is according to the opinion that the kivush of David HaMelech gave Aram Tsoiva or Surya with the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. These would be if a Kohen duchens in Bavel or he eats challah in Surya, this would be a raya as a Kohen. The chilik matanos bekrachim, and in the cities, he was going to go ahead and get the matanos, the zaraya, the l'chaim v'hakeva. From a non-carbon kachin animal, every Kohen got called the matanos. They got the right front foot, the jaw, and the tongue, and the keva, the stomach that contained the rennet. Basically, the Kohanim had a monopoly on cheese and tongue. So even though these are mutter for a zar to eat, but if you're in a place where there are a lot of people and it's there, obviously people they're not going to eat it because maybe someone are going to see them eating it, so they're a little concerned. So they would go over to the Kohen. So this would be a raya that if you're in a large city and you're eating Zor L'chaim Akeva, that you're a Kohen. Kitani miyas, what's our shaila? Nesias kapayim. That Nesias kapayim in Babel is a raya for kahuna. My lav liyuchsin. This is not a raya le'inyan yuchsin. That will be oila liyuchsin. So in answer to our shaila, be poshed our question, Nesias kapayim is a good barometer for saying the guy is an outright Kohen. Loi litruma. For truma, no, again, it's different levels. It would only permit him to eat truma. It would not necessarily permit him to be a fully miyuchastik Kohen. You're going ahead and comparing it to challah. Now challah and truma apparently are the same thing, guys. Right? So challah would be le'inyan yuchsin. So it must be that what? That nesias kapayim is le'inyan yuchsin. You're going ahead and you're saying, you're breaking it down. In the same brisa, fellas, we're saying two things. We're saying nesias kapayim, fellas, and we're saying challah. You're telling me nesias kapayim is le'inyan what? Truma. 1 second. Challah is not truma. Challah must be le'inyan yuchsin. If they're in the same brisa, they must be going ahead telling me the same din. Le'inyan yuchsin. So let's be paishta shaila. Then nesias kapayim going ahead and duchening would be what? Would be considered a good raya liyuchsin. Since we go ahead and put it in the same brisa as challah. Loi. Achilas challah guful the truma. Challah would only allow me to eat truma. So what does the brisa say? The siyas kapayim and bavel allow me to eat truma, and challah in surah would allow me to eat truma. Fred the Gemara, ksav challah bisman hazeh the rabbanon. It must be, we hold, that challah bisman hazeh is the rabbanon, u truma the araisa, and truma bisman hazeh is the araisa. Umaskina mechala the rabbanon l'truma the araisa. Ukida apichlu Rav Huna b'reid b'shul l'rabbanon. And like Rav Huna b'reid b'shul be mapped to rabbanon that chal is the araisa and truma is the rabbanon. No, it's the opposite. So, in other words, there are stepping stones to get to our goal of yichus. They're stepping stones. So we automatically thought challah would get me there, and the answer is no. Since challah is only the rabbanon, if I eat it, it'll get me to truma the araisa, but it won't get me to yichus. So the nesias kapayim is no better than challah. It'll get me lit truma, but it won't get me what? It will get me to challah, but it won't get me what to truma. It will not get me to yichus. So we weren't paishet to shaila. Okay. So again, this opinion is bisman hazeh challah is the rabbanon and truma is the araisa. Again, we'll see perhaps why. Why would someone say that? We'll see. Says the Gemara, right? Tashma, let's try again. Let's try again to ascertain whether the siyas kapayim duchening is what is going to go ahead on and allow me to be a full-fledged kohen. Liyichus. Chazaka l'kahuna. What's a chazaka that you're a kohen? Is nesiyas kapayim, is duchening. V'chilik gronois be'eretz Yisrael. And in Eretz Yisrael, if you go up to the threshing floors and you get from the produce over there, that would be a raya that you're a kohen. With Surya, and in Surya, Armitzova, and anything within 15 days of Yerushalayim, where when they would send out shluchim to Mekadesh Levana could reach, and so you have a bezdin there, then the siyas kapayim raya. Then the siyas kapayim would be a raya too. Avaloi chilik ronis, but not chilik ronis. Ubebavel Surya, and Babel is like Surya. Af Alexandria Shemitzrayim B'Rishoina. If they used to have Bezdin Kavur there before it was destroyed, right? There, you'll be able to go ahead and the kohen would be able to eat truma. Ketani mios, the siyas kapayim, my lav liyuchsin, does not mean liyuchsin, and we can be paished as shaila. Loy lechala, it means le'inyan chala, you be able to eat chala. For the second, hadum yu dechilik karanis ketani, my chilik karanis liyuchsin, just like if you buy the threshing floor, it's going to take the kayin all the way up to yuchsin. After the siyas kapayim liyuchsin, says the loy chilik karanis gufa lechala. Same answer. Same as before. Before it was the chala, but the truma here's the chala. Right? That I would chala is the raisa according to this opinion, and I wouldn't be able to eat chala if I have a nesias kapayim. I would be able to eat chala. If I'm going ahead by the chilik granis for truma, I'd be able to eat chala. And kasava truma bisman azed the rabbanon the chala the raisa, and truma bisman azed the rabbanon the chala the raisa. This is the shita we said before. The opposite. It's the opposite. And we will go ahead and elevate you from eating Truma Rabbanon to Chala Daraisa. So, since Truma Bismanazeh is the Rabbanon, you go to the Granos, you can eat Chala. The Siyas Kapayim, you can eat Chala. But we're not going to go all the way to Yuchsin. And these Dargis, again, going up to first place, right, all the way to Yuchsin, if there's a second place in between and you're in third place, we're going to take you to the second place. So the Havamina was going from third place to first place all the way up to Yuchsin. No. Chala is in the first lashon. Chala was the Rabbanon, Truma was the Raisa. In this lashon, Truma is the Rabbanon, Chala is the Raisa. But it'll only get me up one place. It won't put me all the way up. So we haven't been pushed to the Shaila that Nesias Kapayim elevates me all the way up. That's the way best way to explain it. Best way to explain it. Now, the pitch is over here. Why things are why they are, I think is important. Let's just do a little more Gemara and we'll see Rashi's. The Chudash China. Rav Huna Brei Vishul Rabbanon. Dom Rav Huna Vishul Rabbanon. Ashtinu Rabbanon Bei Rav. They found the Rabbanon Nisiv of Rav. The Yasiv Yekom Rafilu Mandama Truma B'Zman Azed Rabbanon Chalo Deraisa. Even Mandama says Truma B'Zman Azed B'Der Rabbanon Chalo B'Deraisa. Why is that? Why is that? Because of Psukim. Now, by Truma it says the Goncha Piroishcha Yitzarecha. In other words, what makes something yours? When you're settled, you got your parcel of land. This is my crop. So when Bnei Yisrael went to Eretz Yisrael, there was 7 years of capturing Eretz Yisrael and 7 years of dividing up Eretz Yisrael. If Truma is the contingent upon being mine, then there's no chiyuv of being mafresh Trumas Umaisa the first 14 years of Eretz Yisrael, because until then it was not yours. It wasn't yours then. Again, it has to be mine. I didn't have any land to call it mine. So that's the Inyan Truma. However, by the lashon by Chala is different. Why does it say Chala? It says Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amata alehem v'vayachem, upon you coming el haaretz asher ani maybe eskem shama, upon you coming to the land which I'll bring you. So when it says upon you coming, it's mashma Chala is when upon you coming to the land, it's not contingent upon capturing and dividing the land. Says the Gemara. The Yasvi coming, I feel the mandama truma bisman I said the Rabbanon, Chala da Raisa. Shari Zayin shekibshu v'zayin shechilku nischayu v'chala. The 7 years of kibush v'chilik, that's what it's called. Are chayiv and chala. V'loy nischayu b'truma, but they won't be chayiv and truma. Why? Because again, Tiroishcha, the Goncha, V'yitzarecha, it's not Cha, it's not yours yet. V'amina lahu ano, Adarabba, Afil l'manda Omar, Truma bismana said the Raisa, even according to Manam says, Truma in this day and age is the Raisa, Chalo be the Rabbanon. Why? The Tanya, Boyachem ela Aretz, upon your arrival to the land. Iba Boyachem, Yachol Mishin Nichlasula, Shnai Mishleishim Meraglim. I might think when 2 or 3 Meraglim came in other words, I would think any Jew coming in would create the Chiyuv of Chala. Tamalayma, Bevoachem, Chem is Lashon of Rabbim, your Rabbim, Bebias Kulchem Amarti, Lo Bebias Miktsaschem. You know when you Chayiv and Chala? When what? When you all come in. You don't have to wait 7 years, but when you all come in or Roiv come in, at that time is Chala. Now we all know the next piece of Gemara, the Chiaskinu Ezra Amid Beis, when Ezra came up, Lav Kula Solik. Everyone did not come up. So since you don't have a Boachem, a Roiv, it's only the Rabbanon. Masha'enkein, if you hold Kedusha shnia kitchel shaita kitchel lasavavoy, it still would be bisman hazeh truma deraisa. So therefore, we got a certain yedias, and it's nice Aries and Eretz Yisrael now. Now he knows why it's produce. Now you have yedias in the sugya, but also in the mechanics of the sugya, we wanted to go from Nesias Kapayim to here, and we said no. Nesias Kapayim will take me at one level. It may be Linyan Chala, maybe Linyan Truma, the Rabbanon, but it won't take me all the way up. Okay. Says the Gemara Vayta. Tashma, let's again try to be patient the Shaila. What's the halacha vis-a-vis if Nesias Kapayim could elevate me to be a full-fledged Kohen Linyan Yochsin? Tashma, Chazaka l'kahuna, Nesias Kapayim. You know what a chazaka for kahuna that you're a Kohen is Nesias Kapayim. So apparently, right then there we'd stop. You have a good raya, correct? The chilik granos and the chilik of the granos, the dividing up of the from the granary that you're taking from the granary, showing you're a kohen, taking a chumas maisa, the edus and testimony that you're a kohen. Right, the Gemara, edus chazaka he. You're calling edus chazaka. In other words, you're saying the following: you want chazaka l'kahuna. You want examples of chazaka l'kahuna? I'll give you an example. The Nesias Kapayim, chilik granos and edus. In other words, you want a raya chazaka? I'll give you three rayas. Nesias Kapayim, chilik granos, and edus. You're calling edus chazaka? Edus are much stronger than chazaka. Chazaka means, oh, I have a brief, I have some type, since I've been doing this all along, I'm muchzik that I must be a kohen. Since Shalom gets called up to the Torah all the time, he must be a kohen. If there was edus brewer, the Shalom Kagan was a kohen, two people came and said, we know for sure we're 3,000 years old, and we know that his whole family kahanim. So you're equating that? You're saying edus is chazaka? Of course not. Says the Gemara, edus chazaka he? Ela lav hachi kama. Here's pshat. Nesias Kapayim ki edus. Nesias Kapayim is just like edus. Ma edus, when you say it's a koyin liyuchsin, it takes you from whichever place you are all the way up to first place. After Nesias Kapayim liyuchsin, and l'chayra we have a braya brura that what? That Nesias Kapayim can be my liyuchsin. Everyone understand this? I'm glad you do. We're going to slug it up in a second, but not that you understand it for the moment. Good. Now that you understand it, Loi.
Yeah, but what about chilik granos? It's in the middle of the whole the two pieces.
Chilik granos also, in other words, the chilik granos would be like, hey, this is the same thing. If you would go ahead and see some kohen taking chilik granos, it would have the same thing as
both Kapayim and chilik granos is
the same thing. Now, in other words, chazaka would be just like edus is by Nesias Kapayim, edus is bought by is like chilik granos. You know, it would be the same status. Whatever Nesias Kapayim is, we're going to schlep along chilik granos. The edus is going back on both. Now, so says the Gemara, is not get edus says that what loy edus habami koy chazaka ki chazaka. Edus that comes as a result of a chazaka is a chazaka. In other words, you don't have edus on him, you have edus on the chazaka. Edus on the chazaka is the same as the chazaka. What would be an example of edus chazaka? A certain individual came in front of Rami. Amalei muchaskani ba shu kohen. I'm machzik that this individual is a kohen. Now he's going to testify in his chazaka. Amalei ma royas. Why did you see that you're testifying on this person? What he did that he's a kohen. Amalei shekara rishon beis hakneses b'cheska shu kohen oy b'cheska shu gadol. Okay, now let's amalei shekara beis hakneses. Stop. Okay, so right now, you go to shul, you see a person being called up to the Torah. There's a mitzvah v'ki dashtoi. The kohen benches first; he gets called up first. That's the chazaka. He's the kohen. So if a person would testify on that, right? A person would testify on that, then he would be a kohen. Then he'd be a kohen. A person would testify on that. So now, one second. Maybe now they used to call up a chashiv a person first. So that he's called up first is no raya that he's a kohen. Maybe in fact what? Right? Maybe in fact what? He was a great person. Says no. you know, why Shekoira Achrav Levi? They called the Levi afterwards. Had they called it a non-Levi, you'd be right. But since they called the Levi, if you're going to call up the God Lador, you're not calling the Levi afterwards. You're not going to. So the fact they called the Levi is a raya that what? That he was a kohen. Hello, Rav Ami lekahuna al piv, and Rav Ami, as a result, he was miling him through that. He was miling him through that. Let's see Rashi. Eidus haba mikoyach chazaka chazaka. The fourth line down. An eidus that comes as the chazaka chazaka. Ha'eidus nekabel nachiloi b'truma. Not yuchsin. We'll feed him truma. Rashi. Not yuchsin, guys. Lean truma. Kila reinuhu anon loisa chazaka sheseheyed. And it'll be like we saw this guy get an aliyah. If two Adam say we saw him get kohen, we'd say that as well. We'd say that as well. We'd say that as well. But not linyan yuchsin, only linyan kuna. Okay, back in the Gemara.
Blaze, maybe that's why this day and age the Gabbai announces Ein Kan Kohen. So nobody can make a mistake like that.
Yeah, we always say b'makom kohen, Ein Kan Kohen, right? Well, you don't call the Levies. You know, you never call, if there's no kohen, you're not going to call a Levi. And what the problem is the placement. If you're going to call a Levi second, that it's maksud that it's a kohen. If you call a Levi first, then and call Yisrael second, we'll know it's not a kohen.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, you did a very good job yesterday. I'm very hard partial. We're very proud of you. Okay, let's go back to learning. Again, this is being recorded. I don't want to spend any time.
Rabbi,
After all, you're the one who introduced women to the Zoom. I'm shocked. There was a person who came from the Shua ben Levi, and he says, "I'm machzik, you're a Levi." So Amalei Marayas, Amalei Shakar Sheni basic Knesset. You got Levi in the basic Knesset. The Cheskashu Levi, the Cheskashu Gadol. Maybe he was just a chashuv person. No, Shakar Lefon of Kohen. They called the Kohen first. Ve'lo Yishuv and Levi, the Levi al Piv, and he got this Ma'aserisha. Again, the Levi used to get Ma'aserisha. How does the Kamed Reish Lakish? There was a person came in front of Reish Lakish. Amalei Muchaskani Bezeshu Kohen. Amachzid it's the Kohen. Amalei Marayas. What do you see? Amalei Shakar Rishon basic Knesset. I saw him called first in basic Knesset. Amalei, so Reish Lakish said, did you see him be chalik on the granos? In other words, you want to use this as a means of getting him to truma. Did you see him mamish get the truma by the granos? So Amalei Reb Elazar, them ain't sham goyrin but kahuna. Said Reb Elazar ben Padas, who was again, Rabbi Yochanan had big Talmidim, Reish Lakish, and Talmud Chaver is a Talmud. Rabbi Elazar ben Padas was from the great Talmidim of Rabbi Yeshua. So Rabbi Elazar ben Padas, in a very caustic way, said to Rabbi Reish Lakish, the only way you're going to give him truma is there's a goyrin. This man is there when there's no goyrin, you don't have the goyrin. You're not going to give him truma. I mean, calling up enough to the Torah is not enough to give him truma. That's what he said to him. And Zimnin. The main Shem Goyim, Baal Kahuna, Zimnin Haviyasi Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. They were sitting in front of Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Elazar. Asaki Hai Maisa Lekamei, and this Maisa came up in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Reish Lakish, Reisiv. I saw Shachilik ala Goyrin. I saw him get from the Goyrin. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan. The main Shem Goyrin, Baal Kahuna, and he gave him the caustic line. And what? And if there wasn't a Goyrin, you'd be Batal Kahuna. Like, in other words, the only way you think you can go ahead and be Milam to Truma is through the Goyrin. You think calling up to the Torah won't be enough? So Rabbi Yochanan, the Rebbe, gave the caustic line that Rabbi Elazar ben Padas, who said earlier to Reish Lakish. So Rabbi Elazar Bishus. So Rabbi Elazar ben Padas saw Reish Lakish give him a dirty look. Because obviously when he had said this line, obviously he was what? Quoting Rabbi Yochanan. Amar said Reish Lakish to Rabbi Elazar ben Padas, Shamas Mili de Bar Nafcha. You heard from Rabbi Yochanan was a Bar Nafcha. He was a blacksmith. Play Omer Lav Mishmei, right? And didn't say it over in his name. Rabbi Chia Chad Hela Ben Al Pi Aviv LeKahuna, V'Chad Hela Ach Al Pi Achiv LeLevia. The Stayim the Rabbi Hela Ben Al Pi Aviv LeKahuna. That Rebbe, through a father, was Mila the son to Kahuna. The Tanya, A person goes up and says, this is my son and he's a kohen. He's permitted to feed him truma. But Linyan Yuchsin is not believed. Divrei Rabbi. Let's be Mila from Truma liyuchsin. Notice he obviously held like Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei, so Rabbi told him, because it's in my power to feed him truma. And it's not in my hands the capability to go ahead and marrying him off to an isha. Because I don't know what, again, Rashi says over here, Shema Mamzer in the Sinhu. I can't just do that without being checked out. What I mean is biyada to feed truma. Rashi says Sharihu Kohen Bakol Choykan Le Truma. In other words, he has truma, he can give him truma, but he can't create the yichus brief to go ahead and allow him to marry off. Histayim. Okay, so l'chayim you have a raya. Okay, I think let's stop over here because we'll go over this tonight, guys. Bez Hashem, I'll post it again. There'll be a second share tonight at 8:30 in the shul and on Zoom. Again, we won't be able to learn next Shabbos because of Tisha B'Av, so we won't be able to learn Shabbos night. So I want to get a blot ahead so we won't be behind. So therefore, there'll be a second share today, 8:30 in the evening after Ma'ariv, in by Rabbi Rotkin, and it'll be on Zoom.
Motzei Tisha B'Av we will be learning?
Motzei Tisha B'Av we will be learning, yes. Yes, Bez Hashem. Okay.